8 to finish, and then we'll move into chapter 9. So Ecclesiastes chapter 8, about verse 16 is where we left off. Just a reminder of what we're doing here, what we're witnessing here in the book of Ecclesiastes is kind of a dual message, if you will. The ultimate message, we know probably the most quoted verse in Ecclesiastes is to fear God and keep his commandments. That's going to be the conclusion of the whole matter. But in the meantime, the other track that he's taking us on is kind of giving us the formula to enjoy life. Which is fascinating to think that God does care. God wants us to not just go to heaven when we die. Certainly God has that desire for us, but God wants us to be happy here, to enjoy his creation that he created for us here. And so the wise man is giving us kind of a pathway to that. And if you had to kind of summarize what are some of the wise man's tips for enjoying life, what has he told us that we can do or need to do or maybe not do to enjoy life? Okay, work hard. Yeah, work hard. Labor is its own reward. He has said. So that's a good one. What else? All right, eat, drink, and be merry. Enjoy the. We usually look at that in the negative way, but the wise man using it in the positive way. You've worked for it, now enjoy the fruits of that labor. Nothing is better, he said. That is man's destiny, if you will, his lot from God is to eat, drink, and be merry. Anything else? Okay, yeah. Just deal with people the way, kind of the old golden rule there. Treat others as you have them be to treat you. He's also just kind of told us that we need to just accept the garbage of life, if we could call it that. There's the mundaneness of life. There is the unfairness of life. Those kind of things. And his best advice there is that's the way it is. And what's crooked cannot be made straight. By us, and to not get bogged down mentally or emotionally by the inequities of life, to just accept that's the way it is, under the sun at least. And so we pick up in our reading Ecclesiastes 8, verse 16, when I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth. There's the unique phrase there. He usually says under the sun, but now he uses the phrase on earth. Even though one sees no sleep day or night. There's the idea of the restlessness of life, maybe brought on by the anxiety of the stuff of life. Then I saw all the work of God, that a man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. Wisdom isn't the ultimate solution. He said that wisdom is to be preferred over folly or foolishness, but even wisdom can't answer all of the questions of life, that there's just stuff that we just can't figure out, he says. Even though you don't sleep day and night, you stayed up, you're worried, you're anxious about this, you're trying to figure it all out, and we cannot find out the work that's done under the sun. For though a man labors to discover it, yet he will not find it. Moreover, though a wise man attempts to know it, he will not be able to find it. I've written in my margin here that wisdom is not the solution, faith is. And I think the idea here is that if you try to figure out this life and the meaning of life, again, the key phrase here is on earth or under the sun, that it just doesn't make sense. We can't figure it out. And that's just the reality of it. And so he moves now in chapter 9, still same paragraph, for I considered all this in my heart. So I saw the work, I applied my heart, I saw the work, and now I've considered in my heart. so that I could declare it all, that the righteous and the wise and their works are in the hand of God. Anybody have a translation that translates that phrase differently? In the hand of God? What everybody said. One translation says it's at the disposal of God. We are at God's mercy. Uh, so the righteous and the wise in their works are in the hand of God. They're in the providential care of God. People know neither love nor hatred by anything that is before them. And again, I'm going to ask you for help on a translation there. The New King James again says, people know neither love nor hatred by anything that is before them. Anybody got a better? The NIV says, but no man knows whether love or hate awaits him. And there's the idea that we just don't know. We know neither love nor hatred by anything. We don't know whether tomorrow's going to be a day of love or a day of hatred. Remember, he said back over in chapter 3 that there's a time for everything. There's a time for love and a time for hate, but we just don't know what that's going to be. There's the limitations of wisdom, of our wisdom at least. We don't know what awaits us. Everything occurs alike to all. And again, the NIV says we all share a common destiny. Now, as we read these next few verses, I want you to be thinking, what is it that's common? He says that everything occurs alike to all men. Well, he's going to have really more of a narrow focus rather than everything. What is that which is common to everybody? And see if we can find it out here. Finish verse 2. One event happens to the righteous and to the wicked. So again, what's that one event that he's talking about? One event happens to the righteous and to the wicked, to the good, the clean, and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and him who does not sacrifice. As is the good, so is the sinner. And he who takes an oath, as he who fears an oath, or one translation says shuns an oath. And so here's the good and the bad. He's used a lot of ways of describing those two different groups of people. And he says that something occurs alike to them all. One event happens to them all. What is that event, you think? Death. Yeah, yeah. It's just death is going to happen. And so there's no difference under the sun. Now, we would say, wait a minute, there's a big difference, certainly in death for the righteous and the unrighteous, but under the sun, on this earth, it's all the same. We're all going to die. This is an evil uh, in all that is done under the sun. That one thing happens to them all. And so again, there's kind of maybe the unfairness of life. Being righteous and godly is not going to escape you from death. It happens to us all. And that's not fair, Max.
Just a bit of old farmer wisdom. I was at a sale one time. Everybody was talking about this one go-go big farmer that he bought another 160 and another 160. And this old guy, he said, yeah, but when it's all said and done, we all get the same size hole. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what he's saying here. It's all that common destiny. And he says that's an evil. That's not a good thing. We would just think of that's just the way it is. But he says that's an evil. That's again an inequity and unfairness in this life. That being righteous and sacrificing and doing those good things will not escape you from death. Larry.
The last verse or two of chapter 8, basically, it doesn't matter how wise you are, it's never going to make sense, because it's not supposed to make sense. And that made me think my whole school career, I didn't realize this about myself. And when I was studying a subject, if it was physics or Spanish or whatever, it had to make sense in my head. And, there are rules of the universe that govern physics. And so you kind of, oh, well, that makes sense. I see why they did that. Or math or even Spanish verbs or something. But then I got to law school and took a class on income taxes. And that made no sense. It was a bunch of random facts.
Yeah.
There's all these handed the pill that are writing the rules, and stuff, and it's just a bunch of random stuff you had to memorize. I hated it.
Yeah.
It didn't make sense, and that's, no matter how smart you are, it's never going to make sense because it's not supposed to make sense. And that's kind of what, life under the sun is that way. It doesn't matter how wise you are, it's never going to make sense.
Yeah.
I think he's illustrating that in the rest of chapter 9. It's just, you can be the smartest guy on earth, and it's never going to make sense because it's not supposed to.
Right. It's not fair. And it doesn't make sense that the righteous and the unrighteous have the same experience here on earth. And he's actually argued prior to this that many times the unrighteous have a better experience. They certainly in their society, still true today, but even more then, that the wealthy and the powerful got away with murder. And if you were poor and oppressed, you got no breaks. And so still that way, but was even worse that way then. And so again, it's not fair. Nick?
Larry was talking about chapter 8. Think about when people do crazy stuff or evil stuff, people go in and shoot up a place, Hamas, because what they did in
Yeah.
Israel and stuff. And people will study that and try to figure out what motivated them to do this or that. And it's just not going to find out. And what you find out ain't going to make sense anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to call evil or bad or crazy and just move on.
Yeah.
Just understand that's what it is, and like you said, accept it and move on.
You're never really going to be fully satisfied with the answer that you get. Yeah, good points. So verse 3 again, this is an evil in all that is done under the sun, that one thing happens to them all. That's not fair, it's not right, you can't figure it out, but that's the way it is. Truly the hearts of the sons of men are full of evil. Madness is in their hearts while they live, and after that they go to the dead. And so maybe a bit of hyperbole there, broad painting with a broad brush, but men are evil, they are mad, and then they die. It's just life. But verse 4, Ecclesiastes 9, verse 4, but for him who is joined to all the living, there is hope. And so, despite, and Solomon loves to do that, just paint the bleakest picture he can of just pessimism and sadness, and say, but there's a silver lining there. There's madness, there's evil while you live, and then you die. But as long as you're alive, there's still hope. As long as you're living, there is hope. And then, I like this for a saying, for a living dog is better than a dead lion. Help me understand, what do you think that means? A living dog is better than a dead lion. Mark?
The lion's supposed to be the king, and the dog being alive is better off. King.
Yeah, if we're ranking these animals, certainly in ancient culture, and I think we have a little bit of a skewed view of this because we have domesticated dogs, and especially if you're a pet person and a dog person, you're going to think, well, dog is better than a lion anyway. But in this day and time, you have a dog would have been, think of like a hyena or a wild pack of dogs. That's the dog. And we know from other places in Scripture that a dog was viewed as low. In fact, the Gentiles, the Jews would call the Gentiles a dog. So that's how low they were on the pecking. So you have lion, the king of the jungle, up here, and then here's the dog is down here. And so a lion's better than a dog is the premise. But what if the lion is dead and the dog? I'd rather be a live dog, the bottom of the food chain, than be a dead lion, the top of the food chain. And so as long as there's life, there is hope, he's saying. And here's why there's hope and why it's better to be alive than to be dead. For the living know they will die, but the dead know nothing, and they have no more reward. And so those wicked people who've lived their lives and have died, they're not in a great place now, he's saying. They have no reward. They know nothing. They have no more reward. In other words, they had reward. They had benefits and profits while here upon the earth. For the memory of them is forgotten. And he's talked about that from chapter 1 on, about how short our memory is of the accomplishments of others. Also, their love, their hatred, and their envy have now perished. Nevermore will they have a share in anything done under the sun. And so, again, I think we can say, put all of this under that umbrella of verse 3, that this is an evil that's done under the sun. That here's the wicked people, they live, they die, and they are no more. There's no reward for them in that. And so, is he kind of tearing it all down, peeling it all away to show us and to make us long for something more than what's here? Because he goes on to verse 7. So, and I think verse 7 is kind of okay. So, what do we do with that? You've painted this pessimistic picture of life. What do we do with that? Verse 7, go eat your bread with joy and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has already accepted your works. Let your garments always be white, and let your head lack no oil. And so here's this contentment and comfort here. Let your garments always be white. I don't think if we read that, especially we read that in the Bible, and we think of maybe a moral application there, an ethical application, that he'll wash us white as snow. And so let your garments be white means be morally pure. And in a lot of contexts, that would probably be the case. I don't think that's the point here. I think he's saying, wear nice clothes. Take them to the laundromat, get them laundered, get them clean. Because he goes on to, after saying, eat your bread with joy, drink your wine with a merry heart, let your garments be white, let your head lack no oil. And again, that's lost a little bit on us. We think oil, we get shampoo and, astringents to get oil off of us. But in that day and time, oil would be something, in that arid climate, oil would be something that they would add to their head, to their skin, and many times it was fragranced. He's already talked about perfume earlier. They would add perfume to that oil and use that. And so here's the idea of again, just enjoy life. Bread, wine, good clothes, clean clothes. Put the oil on your head. In other words, don't save those things. Use them while you're still alive. Have that contentment and that comfort in life.
I got, once baptized, we're clean.
Yeah.
Let's live, be clean, to stay clean.
Yeah.
Try to stay away from sin always.
But you can do both. You can be clean morally and still enjoy life, still enjoy the best of life. Is that? It seems what he's saying here is that life's meant to be, again, it's to be enjoyed. Use those things. Use that. Don't put that oil over in the corner and wait for a special day. Use it. Put it on your head. Adam?
Oil and like is also like the opposite of sackcloth and ashes.
Yes.
As far as like being happy as opposed to mourning, or and they do that like anytime things were going bad and you wanted everybody to know everything was going bad.
Yeah, you'd cover yourself in that sackcloth and ashes. Yeah, that's a sign of grief or of mourning in some way. But yeah, this is the sign of rejoicing. Be happy. Yeah, good point. So he's talked about contentment. Eat your bread with joy, your wine with a merry heart. Comfort. Let your garments be white, and let your head lack no oil. And now he's going to talk about companionship. Verse 9, live joyfully with the wife whom you love all the days of your vain life in which he has given you under the sun. Notice the juxtaposition, live joyfully in your vain life. If you're going to die anyway, just enjoy it. It is short. And so, and again, this seems somewhat strange and counterintuitive that this, you have to understand it in its context, of course, that he's just saying life is short, so live it up. You want to think, wait a minute, that's not the Bible saying that. Well, he's not saying live it up in the sense of an immoral, debauchery filled life, but he is saying life is short. Be happy. Yeah, live it up. You're going to die. The wicked are going to die. The righteous are going to die. And so, eat your bread, drink your wine, wear nice, clean clothes, get the oil for your head, live joyfully with your wife in the days that you have under your sun. All your days of vanity. For that, finish verse 9, for that is your portion in life. He said that over and over again, different words, your portion. I think one time he says this is your lot, this is your heritage. This is what God wants you to do, he's saying. This is your lot in life. This is your portion, your heritage. This is what God has planned for you. And in the labor which you perform under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with your might. For there is no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you're going. You can't take it with you, is the idea here, and so use it up. And I've used the analogy before, and don't take this to maybe a literal extreme, but he seems to be saying here that, look, you've made all of this money, this degree of wealth, and the right way to do it is that you should enjoy all of that you've done, and you spend your last penny the day you die. It's meant to be enjoyed. Now again, you can take that to an extreme, and we don't know the day we're going to die, so you might want to save a couple pennies there. But this idea of hoarding this wealth and to letting it just sit there and decay, or letting it be handed on, as he's already said, handed on to somebody else who didn't work for it and is not going to do what you wanted to do with it, is futile. That this life was meant to be enjoyed, and so enjoy it to its fullest. Nick?
I think if we can take that part there where he said, it is your portion in life. In other words, God's blessed me with what I have. I can just be happy with what he's blessed me with. Nobody can take my joy away. I'll be happy as the lark. But envy is a thief of joy.
Mm-hmm.
When I start looking around and thinking, well, that portion they got is a little better than mine, and that one's a little better than his. When I start thinking about everybody else, what they have, I totally forget what God blessed me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not happy anymore because I'm not happy anymore.
Yeah.
When we can understand and just accept this is what I got, be happy with it. Is the happy rich man happier than the happy poor man? Probably not. They can turn the thermostat up a little bit more if they want to. But
Yeah.
as far as being happy in life, they're not necessarily more happy.
No.
I've worked for some rich people. They're not more happy than poor people.
Yeah, there's usually more stress and more worries, and he's talked about that, of the anxiety of that life. And so, yeah, just the contentment with what you have, rather than, like you said, the envy of what someone else has. And then that leads us to that philosophical uh, wormhole of, not only does he have what I don't have, but that's not fair. He stole it. He's a crook, and I'm a good guy. And that's just going to make you just stew in your misery. One of my favorite sayings of all of Ecclesiastes is there in verse 10. Whatever your hand finds to do it with your might. Just do your best. Do your best at work. Do your best in your family. Do your best at your hobby. Whatever you do, just do it the best that you can. Um, because there's no work or device or knowledge or wisdom in the grave where you're going. You Again, you can't take that with you. Use it now. Do it now. Do the best that you can and enjoy this life while you have it. I returned and saw under the sun. Now, under the sun is that phrase, isn't it? Throughout the book of Ecclesiastes. But it seems to me that we're seeing it with greater frequency in this section. It's used 29 times in the New King James, at least 29 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. But notice here in verse 6, twice in verse 9, in verse 11, and then again in verse 13. He's just using it over and over again, kind of emphasizing that what he's talking about is, again, not necessarily talking about preparing for eternity, is he just talking about how to understand or to accept or to better enjoy this life on this planet. And so I returned, verse 11 again, and saw under the sun, the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, nor favor to men of skill. And let's pause there. Now, again, a bit of maybe, I don't know, hyperbole is the right word, but uh, not he's not saying it's always that way. Sometimes the fastest guy will win the race. But there's always exceptions to that, aren't there? It's not always that case. If you're a sports fan, you know that. You watch sports and you think, well, this team is better than that team and they're going to win on paper. But then they go and play, and for whatever reason, the Cinderella team ends up beating, David beats Goliath in the football tournament or the basketball tournament or in the football playoffs. And it just happens that sometimes the best team doesn't win. Sometimes the smartest guy doesn't get rewarded for what he is doing. And so there's again that so much of what the wise man exposes us to in Ecclesiastes is the unfairness of life. If life was fair and perfect, the race would always be to the swift. The fastest guy would always win the race. The battle would always be to the strongest. The bread would always go to the wise. The bread, that just means the things of life, the financial things of life. But it doesn't happen that way. And here's the reason, the end of verse 11, one of the, again, most famous quotes from the book of Ecclesiastes. It doesn't always happen that way because time and chance happen to them all. We'd say that's just the way the cookie crumbles. That's just the way it works sometimes. It's not that this guy was better than that guy morally, ethically, not that he was better athletically or financially in wisdom. It's just that's the way the ball bounces. It just time and chance happen to them all. And we need to understand that, I think, in the bigger scheme of God's sovereignty. There's a lot of people in the religious world that have this feeling that everything that happens happens by the hand of God. Whether it's good or it's bad, somebody got cancer. Well, that was God's will that you got cancer, or someone dies. Well, God needed another angel. We try to console ourselves with those kind of thoughts. Or something good happens, that you're going into the shopping center in Christmas time and that parking spot right close to the door opens up. Well, God did that for me. And the wise man just saying, God is involved in our lives, but so is time and chance. That sometimes it's just a coincidence. There's no great spiritual meaning to it. And again, that's life under the sun. Time and chance happen to them all. Verse 12, for man also does not know his time. His time for what? I think back to the idea of death. One event happens to them all in verse 2. Man also doesn't know his time, like fish taken in a cruel net. What a powerful illustration there. Here's this happy fish just swimming along. All of a sudden, here comes this net, and that fish is thinking, what happened? Where am I? And that's the way life can happen for us, or death can happen for us. Like birds caught in a snare, so the sons of men are snared in an evil time when it falls suddenly upon them. Let's talk just a little bit about that word evil. He's used it, I think this is maybe the third time in this text that he's used that word evil. When we think of evil, we normally think of it in that, again, absolute moral sense. That here's someone who has, as Nick said, gone in and shot up a church or shot up a school, and that's just evil. And Bible uses the word in that way, but it also uses it in more of a neutral way here that's not necessarily morally or ethically evil. It's just bad that we get something happens. You think about you crossing the road and you get hit by a car. Well, that's evil. Well, not evil in the way we normally think of it. Not that the person was mowing you down with their car. It was an accident, but it was bad. So sometimes the word evil can mean evil, moral, ethical evil. But sometimes in Scripture, the word evil just means bad. Not that there was what we would call evil involved in it. It was just that's the bad stuff of life. And so we're caught in this bad time, that is death, when it falls suddenly upon us. That's the time and chance that happens to us all. This wisdom I have also seen under the sun, and it seemed great to me. Now, it seems to me that here in verse 13, when he says, "This wisdom I have also seen," that Solomon has a particular incident in mind. That I don't, he could be saying, "This is my general observation," but he might be saying, I can say this because of this that happened. I know this is true because I have seen it. I've witnessed a particular event. And he mentions then there was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it, besieged it, and built great snares around it. Now there was found in it a poor wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that same poor man. So again, this could be like a parable, but it seems to me that with his words, I've also seen, and it seemed great to me that Solomon is thinking about a real event that happened. That here was, and maybe he was that great king. Maybe he was the one going against this city, and it sure looked like. Go back to this references back to verse 11, that the battle to the strong. It doesn't always work that way. Here's this great king coming against this city, besieging it, snares around it. It's a foregone conclusion, right? You read any kind of military tactic book, it's over for that city. That city's going to be destroyed because they're outmanned and outgunned. But there was this poor wise man, and what he did, we don't know the details of it, but this poor wise man had some kind of wisdom, some kind of genius plan to save that city, and they did it, but yet nobody remembered that wise man. Everybody remembers the great king still, but that wise man that he was done, it's all been forgotten.
So the man that pretty much built a town or city, and everybody was happy with how things were going. This king said, "Can't have that. I want that city."
Yeah, I want it for my own. Yeah, and there's some of that evil that's going on in the world there. But so no one remembered the poor man who did this. But then I said, verse 16, wisdom is better than strength. Nevertheless, the poor man's wisdom is despised. And so we're getting some insight. Why was that poor man forgotten? You just think, well, he just time erases your memory, but no, he was forgotten because he was a poor man. He's not appreciated for that. And again, I know that's still a part of our society and our culture, the rich and the powerful. But in this day, it was far greater disparity between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, the powerful and the powerless. It was, we at least, I don't mean to be too cynical, we at least pretend to have justice and fairness, and would say, even what's our symbol for our court system is the Lady Justice, and she's blindfolded. She doesn't care whether you're black or white or rich or poor or what side of the railroad tracks you grew up on. Lady Justice, we want. So at least we go through the motions of saying that. Now, again, you can argue that maybe it's not that way, but we try. And again, we try to give the pretense at least. Well, in ancient times, they didn't even try to give a pretense. Justice wasn't blind back in those days. Justice knew exactly who you were. The judge and the courts knew exactly who you were. And here's a rich man and here's a poor man. The poor man wouldn't even take him to, many times couldn't take him to court, but if you could, you wouldn't because you know you're going to lose. It's just the way it was. It was a two-tiered system of justice there. And so this poor man is forgotten because he's despised. He's a poor, who cares about him? And his words are not heard. Words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard rather than the shout of a ruler of fools. Well, that's worth printing out and putting on the refrigerator, isn't it? The wisdom, the words of the wise spoken quietly should be heard rather than the shout of the ruler of fools. Uh, and I don't know if that's his point, but that's pretty good proverb there that usually, not always, usually the wiser person is the calmer, quieter person rather than the fool who's just blustering and bloviating, the shout of the ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. And so just the shortcomings of wisdom. Solomon is going to argue throughout this book that if you have to choose between wisdom and foolishness, always choose wisdom. But you need to know the shortcomings of wisdom. Wisdom can't answer everything. You don't know, as he said, you don't know what's going to happen after. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Wisdom can't figure out everything. And that wisdom's not always going to be appreciated. Wisdom's better than weapons, but one sinner can destroy much good. And so, even with that wisdom, it's to be preferred, but it's not the end all be all. It doesn't answer all of life's questions and problems. Adam?
Whether it is what Solomon was thinking of or not, the Bible had a footnote about the city of the wise man of 2 Samuel chapter 20. This was right after Absalom's revolt. There
Hmm.
was another revolt. It was a worthless fellow named Sheba who went and hid in the city. And then there was, if you remember that story, Joab and all Israel went against it, cast up a siege ramp against the city, and it stood by the rampart, and all the people who were with Joab were reaping destruction in order to topple the walls. And the
Hmm.
woman came and called to Joab, and I won't read it all, but said, why are you trying to destroy it? He said, well, there's this guy here. And so then they decapitated the usurper, threw his head over the wall, and everybody went home.
Yeah.
Everybody was happy. And so whether Solomon might have grown up with that as a bedtime story.
Yeah, but that's again shows that Solomon may have had a real life incident in mind. Here's where someone saved the city by their wise move, um, but because he was a poor man, nobody cared. And again, you kind of come away thinking, well, boy, Solomon, the life's depressing, isn't it? But as someone has pointed out, Solomon in the book of Ecclesiastes is not so much a pessimist as he is a realist, and just said, look, that's the way life is. And your contentment and your joy is going to be found in just accepting that, living your best life regardless, not being frustrated by that. Nick?
So that wise man in that case, so if a great man saved the city, he would get parades and all kind of accolades. Wise man saves the city doesn't get anything forgotten.
Yeah.
The wise man's going to take much more comfort in all the people in the city that he saved. All those lives he saved, all the destruction he prevented. It's going to take much more comfort and solace in that than a parade.
Yeah.
Where the other man may not. He'd probably rather have a parade, and if it doesn't get parade, well, I'll let it burn.
Yeah.
The wise man's much happier with the people saved.
Yeah. Because he's not doing it for the notoriety, for the accolades. Yeah. A lot of good wisdom in that. So, another chapter of just saying, look, life ain't fair. The race is not to the swift, the battle's not to the strong, and you're going to be much happier once you just accept that. But wisdom still is to be chosen. Wisdom still to be preferred. Is it going to always be appreciated and applauded? No. But it's the best pathway in life. So, all right, we'll pick up there in chapter 10 next time.